Okay, so first problem says x squared equals 169. All right, now where that would come from is a problem that looks something like this. Like if you had x squared minus 169 equals 0. Hold on. Right, because I said when you solve these originally, I said you got to have them set equal to 0, right? So what would B be for that one?
0.
Yeah, 0. Do you guys see that? A would be 1. So that would still be A right here. And C would be a negative 169. But there is no B. B is 0. There is no number in front of x to the first power. So when you just have A and C, the first step will be to get the variable that's squared all by itself, which they've already done right here. And then just put the number on the other side. Then all you have to do to finish is take the square root of both sides. All right? Because what you want to do is you want to solve for x, right? You want to get x to the first power. Well, that means you got to get rid of this squared right here. So what's the opposite of squaring? I just said it a minute ago. Yeah, square root. So the opposite of squaring is the square root. So what you guys do then is you take the square root of the left-hand side and you set that equal to the square root of the right-hand side. So you just take the square root of both sides. And then what happens is, you guys know that this is actually a 2 right here. If there's nothing written in this spot, the index of this root is a 2. And then the square root and the square, they cancel each other out. They undo each other. Those are opposite operations. So all you get on the left-hand side then is just x. Okay? So the square root of x squared, that is just x. That would work for anything. You guys know what I mean? If you had if you had the square root of, you don't have to write this part. If you had the square root of a squared, that would just be a. Okay? Because again, the square root and the square, they undo each other. And you would just get a. But, all right, so to finish this thing, there is one additional step. Whenever you take the square root of both sides, I want you to put a plus or minus on the right-hand side. Because we are supposed to get 2 answers for these, right? I told you guys, I think yesterday, that when you have a squared in there like that, a second power in the equation, then you are going to get 2 answers. So in this one, you're going to get x equals plus or minus. What's the square root of 169?
13.
Yep, 13. So you actually get 2 answers here then. One answer is x equals the positive 13. And then the other answer would be x equals this negative case here. X equals the negative of 13. So that's your 2 solutions. Yep. And if you check your answer, if you put 13 in here for x, 13 squared, well, that would be 169, right? Excuse me. But if you put negative 13 in here for x, negative 13 squared, well, that means negative 13 times itself, right? And negative 13 times negative 13 would give you a positive 169. So that's why you get 2. That's why you get 2 solutions. Let's look at number 2. So same step again. First step would be to get the variable that's squared all by itself, which they already did here for you right here. Then just take the square root of both sides. So you take the square root of the left-hand side. So you got the square root of x squared equals, don't forget the plus or minus. And then you got the square root of negative 49. So, what's the square root of negative 49? Well, the square root of positive 49 is 7. Well, what number times itself would equal negative 49? Negative 7 times negative 7 would give you positive 49. Put it in the calculator. What's it say? Yeah, it should give you an error message. You cannot take the square root of a negative number. You can have this negative out in front right here. That's okay. You can have that negative, but you can't have a negative inside of a square root. There is no number times itself that equals negative 49. So that means this one has no solution.
Oh.
So you're right, really no real solution. So no real solutions. All right, let's go to number 3. So 3. The first thing you got to do again is you got to get the variable squared by itself. So you got to get that by itself. So what would you do? Again, the x squared needs to be all by itself on the left-hand side of the equal sign. Yeah, subtract 7, good. So I want to subtract 7 on both sides. So now I'll have x squared. Those will cancel out and make 0. So I'll have x squared equals 7 minus 7 is 0. And then take the square root of both sides. Don't forget to put the plus or minus on the right-hand side. Here, I'll come over here then. Well, what's the square root of 0? Yeah, it's 0. So in this one, again, on the left-hand side, you have the square root of x squared. Well, again, the square root and the square, they undo each other, so you just get x equals plus or minus. And again, you guys said the square root of 0 is just 0. But can 0 be positive or negative?
No.
Can you have negative 0?
No.
No, 0. 0 is the boundary between the positive and negative numbers. So 0 is neither of those. So 0 is neither positive or negative, so the answer is just x equals 0. So for that one, you only get one answer. Let's go to number 4. So there's 4. So again, we have to get the x squared by itself. So how would I get rid of this minus 49 here?
Plus.
Yep, good. So add 49 on both sides. Those will cancel out, make 0. So then you got 16x squared equals 0 plus 49 is 49. Now would I finish?
Divide.
Yes, good. So I would divide. I got to get the x squared by itself. So again, you always want to get the variable squared by itself. So I need to divide both sides by 16. Those will cancel out, make a 1. So then I will get x squared. Actually, let me put this up a little higher here. Let's go up here. Oops, wrong color. Okay, so we're going to get x squared equals. Now, you might be tempted to divide 49 by 16, but then you're going to get a decimal. And if you notice, 49 and 16 are both perfect square numbers, right? Like 49 is 7 times 7, and 16 is 4 times 4. So I'm actually going to leave it as 49 over 16. So now we're going to take the square root of both sides now that we have the x squared all by itself. So we take the square root of the left side and set it equal to, don't forget the plus or minus. Plus or minus the square root of the right-hand side. So then you get x equals plus or minus Well, when you take the square root of a fraction, we haven't done this for a long time. This is way back in the beginning of the book. When you take the square root of a fraction, you split it. You take the square root of the numerator and the square root of the denominator. So what's the square root of 49? 7. And what's the square root of 16?
4.
Yep. So you just get plus or minus 7 over 4. And you can leave your answer like that if you want, all right? That means x equals positive 7 over 4, and also you would have x equals negative square root of 7 over 4. No, when I said that, wait a minute, I didn't say that right. Not the square root. You would get x equals positive 7 over 4, and then the other answer would be x equals negative 7 over 4. All right, a couple more to go. Now these, we kind of skipped some things in chapter 9 here because we're going to wrap this up tomorrow. It'll be our last new lesson. So what I want you to do with these two is see where that y is there. I just want you to change that to a 0, okay? So change that y to a 0. In fact, do that on number 6 also. Change that y to a 0. And then we're just going to solve these. So what would I do first on number 5?
Add.
Yep, add. So I got to add 25 on both sides. So then these would cancel out on the right-hand side. So I'd have x squared equals 0 plus 25 is 25. Now I have the variable squared all by itself. So take the square root of both sides. And again, don't forget to put the plus or minus in there, because you got to get two answers. And then what's the square root of 25? 5. So on the left-hand side, you have x. On the right-hand side, you have plus or minus 5. Now, again, you can leave the answer like this if you want. That is two answers. Or you could write them separately. You could write x equals positive 5 and x equals negative 5. But it's up to you guys. All right, let's do number 6. So number 6, we got to get the x squared all by itself. So what would you do first? Oh, we got 2 to go. What's that? No. What's that? Subtract 90, yeah. So subtract 90 on both sides. Those cancel out on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side, you got 0, take away 90, so that's negative 90. So negative 90 equals negative 3x squared. All right, so how do I get rid of that negative 3 there? What's that? Yeah, divide. Yeah, you got to divide. It's negative 3 times x squared. So you want to divide both sides by negative 3. So divide this side by negative 3, divide this side by negative 3. And then I'll have, on the right-hand side, the negative 3's will cancel out and make a 1. So on the right-hand side, I have x squared. And on the left-hand side, what's negative 90 divided by negative 3? That's 30. All right, now I have the variable squared all by itself. So I take the square root of both sides. So the square root of the left-hand side has got to equal plus or minus the square root of the right-hand side. Again, because I got to get two answers, right? That's why I have that plus or minus in there. Now this is the first time we have one that's not a perfect square, right? 30 is not a perfect square. The perfect square numbers are like 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, 64, 81, 100, like that. So this one you have to actually use the calculator. So the left-hand side, you got the square root of x squared. That's going to give you x equals plus or minus. So you got to get the square root of 30 off the calculator. Now you do know the square root of 25 is 5, and the square root of 36 is 6, and 30 is between 25 and 36. So your answer is going to come out somewhere between 5 and 6. But you do need the calculator. So make sure you know how to take a square root on the calculator, you guys. So I get, well, I guess I should write approximately here, right? Because I'm going to end up rounding this off. So I get x is approximately, I got 5.4772 25575. But I think the book wants you to round off to the nearest hundredth. So this is the tenths, this is the hundredths. So you are going to cut this off right here. So again, you look at the next digit right here. If that digit is 5 or greater, then you round this 7 up to an 8. If this number, if the next digit is less than 5, then you would leave this as a 7. So what's the final answer? What's that?
5.48.
Yes, 5.48. So x is approximately positive or negative 5.48. All right, one more to go. So this one is a story problem. Get it in there. There we go. All right. So this says Mrs. Culver is building a retaining wall for her garden. It says her garden is rectangular. So I'll draw a picture. So her garden looks like this. All right. And then it says the garden is twice as long as it is wide. Well, that means, so if I underline that, the garden right here says is twice as long as it is wide. Well, that would tell you that the length would be equal to twice the width then. So what you would have then is this side would be W, this side would be W, this side would be 2W, and this side would be 2W. Well, then it tells you the area. The area is 578 square feet. So if you guys remember the area of a rectangle, so the area in here, so then it does not look like a 2W up here. I'll leave it though. The area is equal to length times width if it's a rectangle, right? So length times width has to equal the area. Well, we just said the length here is twice the width. So the length is 2W. So we're going to plug 2W in right here. Times the width, which we're going to leave as W, has to equal the area, which they gave you was 578 square feet. All right. So then what do you get right here? What's 2W times W? Yeah, by the way, these are supposed to say 2W. Yes. Ethan says if you take 2W times W, you get, if you do 2W times W, you get 2W squared equals 578. Yeah, this side over here, this is supposed to be a 2W. All right, and then we got it. No, now it's just like all the other problems we did once we got it to that point. So we got to get the variable squared by itself. So what do I do? I'm right here. I got 2W squared equals 578. So I got to get rid of this 2 here because I'm trying to get the W squared all by itself. So how do you get rid of that 2? Yep, you divide it. Yeah, you want to get the variable squared all by itself. So we are going to divide both sides by 2 right here. These 2's are going to cancel out. And I'm going to get W squared equals, what's 578 divided by 2? 289? Okay. Now I got the variable squared all by itself, so now I take the square root of both sides. So I take the square root of W squared, set that equal to plus or minus the square root of 289. So then the square root of W squared is just W equals plus or minus, what's the square root of 289?
17.
That is 17. Now, that means I got W equals 17, and I got W equals negative 17. So if this was a pure algebra problem, you would get these 2 answers. But since it's a story problem, which one do I throw out? That equals those. It says the width is 17, and also the width is negative 17. Which one do I keep? I keep the positive one, right? Yeah, the width here would be in feet, okay? If this area right here is in square feet, then the width would be in feet. So we got 2 answers there. We have 17 feet and negative 17 feet. Well, you can't have a width or a distance that's negative, okay? There's no such thing as negative 17 feet, so you cross that one out. Now, what were we supposed to find? Yeah, it says what is the length. So they're being even more tricky on this one. Yeah. The question here was what is the length? Well, that means we got to take whatever we got for the width and plug it into this expression right here, right? We want to take the 17 and we want to plug it in right there. So the length is equal to, I'm looking at this thing right here. The length is equal to 2 times the width. So the final answer of this thing, you're going to write the length, you're going to write the length is equal to 2 times the width, so 2 times 17. So that's going to be 34, right? And again, if the area was in square feet, then the length would be in feet. So that's our final answer, is this right here. And then I want to point this out because this is like, if you're taking the SAT, they're famous for this kind of stuff. Like if this was a multiple choice question on the SAT, they would have, one of the answers they would have would be plus or minus 17. And what happens to you is you're so excited that you got the right answer, right? You got that the width was plus or minus 17. You see that answer listed there and you choose that multiple choice answer or whatever, and you're all excited because you think you got it right. But you got it wrong because they didn't ask for that. They asked for the length. You know, or another one of the answers they'll have is they'll have this answer right here. They'll have W equals 17. You're like, oh, it's 17 feet. I got it right. No, you didn't get it right because they asked for the length. So the actual answer for this is this part. It's the length. It's 34 feet. So you got to watch for that on the SAT. They do that to you all the time. I would guarantee that one of the answer choices would be plus or minus 17, one would be 17, and one of them would be 34, and the 34 is the correct answer.